shoot. Fires from the top of the key and banks it home. The Liberty take a 2-point lead.
Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Felicia, and I'm joined by my co-host and husband, Francois. This is episode 17, recapping the final week of the regular season for the Liberty. This week was a tough task, facing the Dallas Wings on Tuesday, the LA Sparks on Thursday, and the Washington Mystics on Sunday. Let's get into it and start with the Dallas game, which was a nail-biter.
A nail-biter, definitely, and it definitely felt like it was a playoff game, don't you think, Felicia? Like the intensity, the back and forth between the two teams, it was very stressful, but also beautiful to watch, and I felt like the Liberty definitely played that game because they had a point to prove. We remember, and to be fair, it might have been the turning point of the Liberty season when Dallas won this Camp Day game on July 19th pretty comfortably, even though the score was 98-88 back in July. But just the way the Dallas Wings played that game was so dominant that, you know, they really shook the Liberty up. And so I felt like this game, the Liberty really wanted to prove something. But Dallas is definitely a tough matchup. I feel like if we had to face them in the playoff, it would be really hard. It turns out in the end that they're going to be on the other side of the playoff bracket. But what do you make of this Dallas Wings team, Felicia?
It's a tough team, and it's been a tough team for the Liberty this season. You know, after the July game, after that loss, you know, I think the Liberty they got a gut check, and they needed that. And I think from that game, you saw the Liberty kind of reassess, reevaluate, and come out stronger. I think from that loss, it pushed them and motivated them to come out even stronger, and they've had a great run since. So I think, you know, not seeing Dallas this whole time since then, you know, they had something to prove. They needed to make sure that, you know, we're not just going to lose easily. You're not going to have a comfortable win against us. And so this was a really tough game. It definitely had playoff vibes in this game, and you could just tell the intensity was on from the beginning. Stewie, Laney, I mean, they were your leading scorers, and so they definitely had a big game plan here. But also on the other side for the Wings was Sabali.
The unicorn.
As we call her, the unicorn. I mean, there wasn't much she could do. That the shots were going down for her. She was on fire. And so, you know, this was a tough game, and, you know, they knew that. This is a really good team, and, you know, they're in the playoffs. So this was a game that I was ready to see, like, okay, with all these games the Liberty has played against other teams, Vegas and others, I wanted to see how they were going to play Dallas again because it's been so long since they've played them. And it was a nail-biter. It went in waves, you know. Dallas had a run and the Liberty had a little bit of a run. And defense was crucial. You know, again, Betnijah, what can you say about her? I mean, she was a bucket getter, but she was also playing her role on defense. And it's tough. It's a tough matchup, you know, guarding Arike and even at the end being on Sabali. But she did a phenomenal job in this game.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the reason why I was saying it's a tough matchup is not only do they have a lot of centers, very physical centers that, you know, the Liberty can only match up with so much. Yeah. I mean, they have obviously Jonquel Jones, Breanna Stewart, Dolson from the bench, Anshu, even though unfortunately she doesn't play a lot. But, you know, you have so many centers, and then you have a player like Sabali that can do pretty much a bit of everything. It's really hard to figure out, like, I kept telling you during the game, like, okay, like, who's going to guard Sabali? Because then you also have to worry about Arike Ogunbowale, and Arike is usually doing pretty well against us every time we're facing her and the Wings. So, I was definitely, like, you know, worried as to, like, how they were going to contain them. And what really surprised me is the physicality as well of Dallas. Like, they really, like, I think I've noticed that there's a lot of teams now, I feel like it's the game plan to beat the Liberty is to try to be overly physical with them, because every time you think that you're going to have a cushion against the Liberty and give them the final blow, the Liberty never really like fall behind for too long or for too much. And even if they do, they always come back. And so, you know, the physicality of the Wings was really like something that I noticed. But yeah, you mentioned Breanna Stewart and Betnijah Laney. They were definitely the offensive force for the Liberty, because Sabrina had come back from a right calf injury, even though Sandy said that it was, you know, they were taking more precautions than anything. They were saying that Sabrina just felt that her body was really tired and she needed a rest. And I think it was definitely a good thing, a wise thing. But that game, we could tell that it was definitely not the usual Sabrina. And adding the pressure of also trying to beat Diana Taurasi's free throw record in the same amount of game, because it was pretty much that game for her to beat it with the same number of game. I think that kind of added a bit of pressure, and she forced a lot of shots. I mean, she missed shots that she would have normally made, but I felt like maybe in the back of her head, like she felt the pressure of beating that record, and you could tell physically she wasn't really there. She wasn't her usual self.
Yeah, I mean, you know, coming off of that, you know, precaution with the right calf, you know, I think it just seemed like she was trying a little bit harder than usual. Those shots typically go down for her. It was an off day. You know, maybe getting that 3-point record might be in the back of her head. Who knows? But I think the shots were just a little off. Maybe she was pushing a little too hard. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was one game. I know she's a shooter. She's gonna keep shooting. That's what she does, and it'll come back. It's not gonna be gone for long.
Yeah, and then the third quarter, I think when we needed it the most, Breanna Stewart literally took over. I think like I was like looking on Twitter to see people's reactions, and I also tweeted about this. She literally took over. And I think that's what I really like. What's really impressive with Breanna is that she obviously is one of the superstars of the league. She's an extraordinary player, probably one of the best female basketball players of all time. But she doesn't like do it in a selfish way. She only get another gear when she feels like the team really needs it. And if there's one thing that I would say maybe could give her the edge for MVP, even though whether it's Asia or Alyssa Thomas or Breanna Stewart, all of them could get it. It's the win shares, and there's a stat from her hoop stats that says the updated win shares formula. The leaders in win shares this season, based on the her hoop stats updated, and basically Breanna Stewart is number one with 9.3 win shares, which means that she's the decisive factor for the Liberty to winning all those games. And seeing her taking over in that third quarter, I was so confident that the Liberty were going to take that win. But unfortunately, fourth quarter, Dallas made a comeback. I remember at some point they had a timeout. Right after the timeout, they scored like 8 points in a row. Enrique was on fire and tried to really lead a team. And I was like, oh man, this is getting tight at the end of that game. And then it was going back and forth. And then the last play of the game, I think at some point Breanna Stewart had some free throws, or she made free throws. Then at some point they got the possession, they missed it, and then they kept the ball, which allowed to kill a bit of time. But I don't think they got to score in that last play, if I'm not mistaken. And then last play for Dallas, Satu, with the ball is on Enrique's hand. They sort of do a play where they don't set a screen, but it forces the Liberty to switch. Betnijah is on Enrique and managed to afterwards go on Satu Sabally. Satu Sabally manages to create a bit of gap, even though I do feel like she kind of pushed Betnijah. Takes that shot, the ball is in the air forever, rolled over the rim, and then
It's a scramble.
God knows what happened after that in the paint. That was like a wrestling game to fight for the ball. But miraculously, the ball got into Stewie's hand, and that was game over. The Liberty took that game 94-93. What did you make of that end of that game?
That was a wild ending, but I'm glad Betnijah was on Satu because I think throughout the game, what you saw was that I think there were moments where whoever, others who defended Satu Sabally, they gave her just a little too much space. Just that little bit of space created enough for her to make her shots. Even with Stewie, hand in the face, everything, Satu was making her shots. And so, Betnijah tends to get closer. She tends to engulf you, that she makes it annoying and uncomfortable. And I think she did just enough for Satu to kind of be uncomfortable. It did look like she pushed off a little bit, but she didn't have time. She had to push off and adjust to get that shot up. Whereas I think with others, they give her a little bit of space. She doesn't have to push off. She doesn't have to do anything. She's kind of in rhythm. And so, she can take that shot. And so I think Betnijah did just enough to disrupt that shot, which thankfully won us the game in the end.
Yeah, so it was the last time in the regular season that those two teams were facing each other. So overall, we got 2 wins and Dallas got 1 win. They only played each other 3 times this season. But, the next time we could potentially face them, it would be in the final because they would face in the first round the Atlanta Dream. And then if they pass the next round, they would face the winner of the Las Vegas Aces versus the Chicago Sky. And everybody says that, Dallas could be the dark horse in those playoffs. But it's like they could go to the final and they could even lose in the first round as well. Nobody, I think, would be shocked or surprised because it's been an up and down season for them. But they definitely have the talent. And that was definitely a fun matchup. And I'm happy we got the win. And so now let's move on to the next game that took place this past Thursday against the LA Sparks. And I didn't really know what to expect of that game because the Sparks had a lot of injuries. Neka and Chine Agumike were out for this game, just as Lexi Brown. We knew that before, prior to this game, that she'll be out for the remainder of the season. Nia Clouden as well. It's been a hectic season for the Sparks in terms of injuries. So you have a team that has a lot of their core players out, but at the same time, they could still hold on to a playoff spot if they had won that game. So they had everything to play for, whereas the Liberty, even though technically they could still take that number 1 seed, everybody knew that it was going to be very unlikely that the Aces were going to lose 2 games against the Mercury, or if not, just 1. So it kind of created this kind of weird start of the game. Even like the crowd, it took, a bit of time for the crowd to get to the Barclays and even cheer for the team. And the Sparks were hungry. Leisure Clarendon was everywhere. They had a really great game against their former team, the New York Liberty, and then a lot of turnovers for the Liberty. So it wasn't up for a good start. And once again, for the second time in a row, Sabrina Ionescu was a shell, of herself. It was probably like, I don't know, it was almost shocking to me how many shots she missed. I don't think she scored any points in the first half, but it's just also the way she missed her 3-point shots. They were way off.
Yeah, she was, I believe, 0 for 6
Yeah.
in the first half. And it just seemed like she was really trying hard to get these threes to go down, but they were off. They weren't crisp. They weren't what we typically see from Sab. And so, obviously you have other players that can do what they need to do as well that picked up, in her place. You had Laney, you had Stewie. Everyone sort of contributed, even though she had her woes in the first half. And I figured by the second half, there'd be some adjustments, and there were definitely for her game. But, I think, first half, you could see the Sparks really wanted this badly. Obviously, they were playing for a playoff spot, or they were going to be out. So, Clarendon came out on fire. Every shot they threw up, it just looked like it was just going in for them. So I just think, the LA Sparks had more to prove this game than the Liberty, and so they just came out on fire. But again, for the Liberty, I don't think, for them with these last couple games of the season, they're still playing hard. I think they might relax a little bit just because, you're preparing for the playoffs. You're in the playoffs. There's not much to play for right now. But you don't want to lose either.
Yeah, because you still want to, give a good show to the crowd that came. But at the same time, you don't want to get injured. You don't want to necessarily, do things that, you might regret comes playoff time. So it kind of gives you this, puzzling, equation to solve, where it's like you don't want to do too much, but at the same time, you still have a game to play. And you also got to give props to the Sparks as well. I felt like their defense was really, really good. They were really aggressive on the ball. I mean, they have Jordan Canada, who's, I believe, the best, stealer in the regular season, or if not the second one. So she put a lot of pressure. Zaya Cook, I thought, was pretty good as well. Clarendon, and then MB was also really good on the board, and providing that presence on the inside. So you also have to give props to the Sparks that came really well prepared. But also I think that mentioning Stewie with the Dallas game, that's something that I appreciate with her. It almost doesn't matter which context, which team. Bottom team, top team, she's always going to play 100%. And we were discussing with another fan today about, on the Fans Appreciation Day at the Barclays. And, we were talking with a fan that got to see Stewie playing in high school and college, and how, everywhere she went, she won everything. She won everywhere she went. And she's a winner. She's not here to just play second fiddle. She wants to win every game. And I think that kind of mentality is so admirable and so incredible, because she was pretty much carrying the team in the first half with 19 points. And if it wasn't for Stewie, I think we would be way far behind in this first half. But now let's move on to the second half, and what was definitely the highlight of the game. It was Stefanie Dolson.
Come on, Big Mama Steph.
Yeah, she was incredible. Now, obviously, we know that she's still trying to find a fitness after a long absence due to an ankle injury, and we see that she's starting to get in there. She's starting to be a little faster on her lateral movements. Being able to be a good presence in the paint. But she's also a very good three-point shooter for a center. And, when you need her to make that free, she's making it. The only thing we didn't know is that she was going to make 5 in a row at a time where the Liberty really needed it, and that really, fueled the Liberty's comeback.
Yeah, that fueled a huge comeback. I think it was 26-8 was the run. And so, yeah, Steph Dolson was huge for the team. Scoring 5 threes pretty much in a row. She had the hot hand at that point. So it's why not keep going to her? And the odd part was the Sparks weren't guarding her.
Yeah,
that was the crazy part. It was just she's open. They're giving her space, because obviously you have Stewie on the court, you have Sabrina on the court. Even when they switched out, you have Marine on the court. Yes, they're threats. They're going to be threats from 3. You're probably not thinking Steph's going to hit 5 threes.
Yeah.
But she did. And I think after the third 3, they should have known, somebody needs to guard Steph Dolson. But hey, we're thankful that they didn't, and she got those extra threes in, and that definitely set off a good run for the Liberty to come back in this game and take this game. And so kudos to Steph. I think coming back from injury and just seeing her shoot with confidence was just a great and just an added bonus for the Liberty, because they definitely have the players, not just the starters, but their bench. They definitely have the players that can help push this game even further.
Yeah, and I just love how humble she was at the end of the game when she was asked about it. Like, what did she say at some point? That she had her eyes closed and
yeah, she was like, low key, I just closed my eyes and put it up, and it went in. So
yeah, and then what was also funny after the game, the post game conference, where she shared like how Sabrina came to her and was like, "Isn't it fun?" And she was like, "Well, yeah, of course." And because Sabrina, that's like that's like a bread and butter. Like, she does that every game. But for Steph, it's a little more unusual, should I say? So obviously, that's if you make 5 or 6 threes a game, that's definitely a great feeling. And talking about Sabrina, I was so happy that she turned things around in the second half, and that also was a huge booster for the Liberty, because if Sabrina doesn't make her shots, not that we cannot win the game, but that's definitely going to be much harder. And she finally did it. She broke the record of Diana Taurasi. Now, if you're if you're a hater, you might argue that, she did it in 35 games, whereas Taurasi did it in 34 games. But I think overall, if we look at the stats, especially after the Mystics games, I wouldn't be surprised if Sabrina has, on average, more threes on average for the season, because obviously it's the longest season, the longest in the history of the WNBA, so records are going to be broken.
Yep.
But to get Taurasi's record, who's considered as one of the greatest of all time, and shoot threes like blindfolded, it is a tremendous achievement, and it came at a time where the Liberty really needed it. And a corner free, and I only realized later when the Liberty posted like a close up of the 3-point shot that she took a corner free and the ball kind of hit the corner of the board before it went in, so it was like very unusual. I'm pretty sure that Sabrina definitely didn't want to use the board to make it, but what matters is that it went in. We were really happy for her. A tremendous achievement, probably like the most tremendous 3-point shot of the season of all time. Like, she's been amazing. Like, she keeps improving every year in terms of her shot, her technique, and like before she would really struggle when there was a lot of pressure on her, and at the beginning of the season it was more like catch and shoots, but now she's like off the pick and roll, or sometimes like creating her own space and taking a quick trigger. She really increased her range of shooting, and now it's really hard to stop her.
Yeah, and she's only going to get better. She's only going to go up from here.
Yeah.
Watching Sabrina since she's come in the league, she is going to develop, and when you talk about Diana Taurasi, I look at Sabrina and think, she's going to be a reflection of that one day, because it's just a few years in the league now, and she's getting better and better, and she's going to be her own legend in her own right, because she's definitely improving herself in this game. And like we said earlier in the season, I was like, I didn't want to just see 3-point shots from Sabrina. Obviously, we know she's a sniper at the 3-point line, but that inside game definitely has to be developed, and she's developing that, and driving to the basket and quick and getting these shots up and creating shots and coming off the ball a lot better. I think the Sparks definitely tried to go back to trapping her, and double teaming her.
That was just like,
yeah,
remember of last year,
Yeah, that was the thing. A lot of teams did, to her last year, and so I think the Sparks were trying that in the first half, and then the Liberty made the necessary adjustments so that way she wouldn't get trapped too much. And she, she's a shooter. Shooters are going to shoot.
Yeah.
And that, even though it was surprising to see her go 0 for 6 in the first half, you knew she was going to come back, and she was not going to let that sit at all. She never does. And so, it was great just to see her, make those shots, beat the record. And you could see she had a little smirk on her face, like knowing she finally did it. And so it's just a great achievement at such a young age in this league, just a few years in and already, picking up such accolades and beating like some tough records out there. And it's just a great win for the Liberty and just all that they've accomplished this year, just watching them in this game and just seeing everything click and really seeing them, how they've bought into their roles. And just seeing it all click and work. And just like Stewie said, they're not even at their peak, and so they haven't even peaked yet. And so I'm just excited to see. I hope they stay together even after this season. I want to see them run it back even next year, no matter what happens. Obviously, we want them to win the finals, but no matter what happens, I hope they can run this back, because I do think there's still room to grow and room to get better, and they're already, in our eyes, unstoppable when things are clicking and they're going with pace. When they're moving that ball with pace, they are unstoppable. And so, I'm just excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, no, definitely. So just like to conclude, the Liberty literally overwhelmed the Sparks in the fourth quarter with threes and more intensity, and ended up winning that game 96-89. And like you said, there's definitely a core group that has blossomed throughout the years. It's one thing, obviously, to have big numbers on paper. It's another to gel as a team and be happy to be there and play for one another. I know we know that some players made some sacrifice financially just to be able to be on that team. But we've had already a couple of good news. We had mentioned Kayla Foran last podcast that she extended her contract with Liberty. The other great news this week was Betnijah Laney, who also extended her contract up until 2025. So we know that she's locked in for 2 more seasons for the Liberty. And, the organization has been full of praise of Betnijah. Betnijah took a little pay cut, a slight pay cut, so that shows a commitment to the team and a willingness to allow other players to re-sign as well. But New York has been a home. I mean, we got to see in the season on where, they focus on Betnijah, that, she, bounced around from different teams despite her level. She had a couple of, serious injuries, and then, got cut from teams. And, the bubble season during the first year of the pandemic was a breakout season for her when she ended up being the most improved player. And after that, signing for New York, it was the perfect fit. It felt like it was meant to be, that she's the definition of New York. When I see her, for me, she's representing New York. Her toughness, the way she plays, the way she never gives up, the way she gives everything. I'm so glad that, she decided to resign, and because she could have, tried the free agent markets, and I'm sure a lot of teams would have been happy to try to recruit her.
Especially for that defense.
Yeah, I mean, defense, and also what she brings on offense. I mean, she really improved a 3-point shot, and that corner three is deadly, and she could do so many things on the court, that she's not just a defender, she's not just a corner free shooter. She attacks the basket as well. She finds the mismatch and how to take advantage of those. So, we're so glad that she resigned. Hopefully, next would be Stewie and Jonko Jones, who obviously are signed only for the season. And I really hope that they'll figure a way to re-sign them, because I feel like this group is special and can be out there for a long run and compete with the Aces and whoever strengthen themselves for next season. And so let's move on now to the last regular season game of the 2023 season. And to be fair, for all the games today, I really didn't know how it was going to play out, because there wasn't much to play for. I mean, we knew after the Sparks loss, that the Sparks were out of the playoff race, and that the Chicago Sky who won their game that same night, secure the last spots for the playoff. So it was pretty much to decide 5th and 6th. I was trying to look at all the different tiebreakers and everything seemed to show that the Mystics, whether they won against the Liberty or lost, were still going to remain 7th. And then the Liberty, there was very little hope for them to get that number 1 seed. So it was kind of hard to figure out how this game was going to go. But the Mystics, that they've had a lot of injuries. They try to, get their groove in. So they were going to play tough and ruin probably the last game of the season for the Liberty. But I mentioned the Dallas Wings as being the tough matchup. The second toughest matchup, and now it turns out that this is going to be the matchup for the first round, the Washington Mystics. That's probably the worst matchup you could have thought of for the first round of the playoffs, don't you think?
It's not ideal. It's not ideal, but every team, this league, no matter where you place, every team is going to play hard. Every team's going to play tough. And so for the Liberty, it doesn't matter who it is. You're trying to win a championship. You're going to have to play the best of the best out there in order to get there. And so, yeah, it's not the ideal matchup you may want in the first round, but it's what you got to do. If you can get through the Mystics, I think they can take it all. So... Yeah. And unfortunately, with the Mystics, some, their players came back. Deladon is back, and they're
still missing Shakira Austin.
Yeah.
Which will also be another game changer if she was coming back. So
yeah, we don't know if she'll be back in time for this playoff run, but we'll see. But the playoffs is a different beast. Everyone resets. For Stewie, she knows what it takes to go all the way. Vandersloot the same. Dolson the same. They've won championships. Even JJ, she's been there.
Yeah.
She may not have won, but got into the finals. And so I think this will be a good test for them. I think with Stewie at the helm, this will be a great time just watching that leadership and seeing them go at another level, because I do think playoff, it's different. Everything sort of resets. It's a different animal, and I feel like we're going to see a different team.
Definitely. Sorry if I cut you off, but definitely. You cannot draw any conclusion from today's game because you could tell, like, the way the Liberty were playing today. You could tell at times that they were, easing off their foot from the gas, because there were times where, they let literally a couple of players wide open.
Yeah.
And on the rotations, like, I didn't feel like they had their usual efforts on defense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, you could, give credits to the Mystics who have a lot of good guards. But the Liberty were not playing the basketball that we're accustomed to. And also, they're definitely not playing the type of games that they will play in the playoffs. So, I wouldn't be too worried based on that game. I'm definitely worried because it's a tough matchup. But the way they gave freedom to Brittney Sykes and Natasha Cloud, even though they're tremendous players, I don't think the same thing will happen when it comes to the first game of the playoff, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, you have to tighten that up. You're going to have to tighten, especially on those two players. And, and I think this game, what I noticed as well was that, Stewie's shots weren't really going down.
They were not going down.
I think if Stewie even hit half her shots, probably, they would have won this game today. But, it just I'm thankful it's just the last game of the regular season. Yeah. It's not playoff. She's going to come back. She's going to do her job. I'm not too worried about that. It was just an off night for her. And so, yeah, I think, watching the Liberty, it was like the last game. They were in it, but yeah, you could tell it wasn't the full intensity that we've seen from the Liberty this season in certain games. And so, maybe they were just trying to take it easy, exactly not get anyone injured, because also the Mystics are quite physical. You know,
that was definitely a physical game.
There are definitely some plays where you're just like the ref calling common fouls or not calling a foul, or, you know, especially the play on Sabrina where it turned out to be a flagrant one where the player literally got her around the neck.
Yeah, it was Natasha class, by the way.
Yeah, and so I just think that's just something, you know, they're going to be more physical, and I think the Liberty they have to prepare for it. They haven't played the Mystics in a little bit as well, so this is probably a good test for them, just kind of getting the feel of what the Mystics will bring probably in the playoffs, and they can get ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, I also read that, you know, usually Breanna Stewart doesn't necessarily do so well against the Mystics, so when Elena Donovan plays. But to be fair, this game, I didn't really feel like the Mystics, like, you know, defense was, you know, what caused Stewie to miss all the shots. It just wasn't going in because she had quite a few open shots, to be honest.
She had open shots for sure. They just weren't going down.
Yeah, and overall, I feel like the field goal percentage of the Liberty was not to their usual standards. So they're definitely going to have to rectify that. My question, though, is that I felt like, you know, when shots were not going in, and we definitely discussed that at some point during the game, I was surprised that they didn't try to feed it more in the paint, Jonquel Jones. I think that's something that they're going to have to be careful. You know, this lack of variety on offense. And, you know, Jonquel Jones has shown that now she's back to a, you know, MVP level. But there's times where literally she wouldn't get the ball at all on the inside. And I don't feel like, you know, the centers of, you know, the Mystics, you know, can really stop Jonquel Jones. So I don't know. I really hope that they think about it more, especially if they, you know, watch the videos of that game, that they try to find a way to involve Jonquel, because defensively she's there and she grabs a lot of rebounds, but offensively she tends to disappear, and that's not always a fault. So I hope that they change that.
Yeah, you definitely saw. I just felt like she wasn't in the paint as much, or as I'm used to seeing. I felt like they were sort of regressing just a little bit back to the early part of this season. Not completely, just a little bit, where it would get her out of the paint and she was more kind of on the perimeter. And it was just like, she needs to stay in the paint. That is where she needs to live, because, and if you're feeding it to her, she'll likely get the bucket or the foul, you know, at least. And I think that is where, you know, maybe again, this is the last game of the season. It's not much to play for. Yes, they want to win because obviously they rallied, you know, in the fourth quarter, and the crowd was. I don't think I've ever heard Barclays this loud.
It was really loud.
I don't even think we've gotten loud with Vegas and other teams, but my ears were ringing. I was like, I've been at every home game and my ears were, I was like,
listen, that was fan appreciation day game.
Yeah,
so.
The fans came out. Definitely they came out. And so, you know, it was, you know, they definitely played tough. I don't think the Liberty I don't think in this game they were necessarily trying to lose it or because you saw them rally so heavily in the fourth, and you know, they tied it up, and you know, obviously, unfortunately, you called it. You might have jinxed it at the very end when you were like, please don't get the ball to Sykes, and that is exactly who got the ball in the end and made an incredible shot. There was not much. She got up really high in the air, and that shot went down. So that was a tough shot, but kudos to them for taking it.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I was wrong, but yeah, like in terms of the noise level, you know, the Liberty made a comeback, and when you start putting a little bit more effort and play Liberty basketball, they're really hard to stop.
Yep.
And it gets the crowd going. The crowd was really loud, and I cannot wait for the playoff, because if that's what it's like for the last regular season game, imagine the playoff. I mean, I remember we had the chance for the first time to be at a playoff game at the Barclays last season against the Chicago Sky, and even though we lost that series, unfortunately, it was really, really loud. So I expect it to even be louder for the first game next Friday, and I think that the lower level is already sold out, so Hopefully we could beat the previous records. That was the last game against the Las Vegas Aces. But the comeback was great. Vandersloot started cooking. Stewie started making her shots. She got the ball on the inside, tied the game 88-88. And then after that, the Mystics had the last possession. They gave the ball to Elena Donadon, an incredible block by Stewie. Unfortunately, not enough to. It went out of bounds, and the Mystics kept the ball. So when they were drawing the last play, I saw that Sandy Brandello took a timeout because she wanted to make sure that they knew what they were doing on defense on the inbounds. There was 0.5 seconds left. But I was telling you, I was like, I bet the Natasha Cloud or Brittney Sykes going to get the ball and might score and shush the crowd. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. Brittney Sykes has to be probably the best, if not one of the best athletes of this league. She jumped so high to get that ball on the alley-oop pass. And there was nothing that they could, the Liberty could do. I know that Elena Donadon sent a good screen to give space to Brittney Sykes. And unfortunately, Natasha Cloud waved the crowd goodbye. Brittney Sykes celebrated as if they had won the title. And the Liberty lost. The crowd was quiet. All of a sudden, they checked the play. We knew that it wasn't, going to change anything, that they were going to accept the basket. But I really hope that the Liberty look at that last play, the way Brittney Sykes and Natasha Cloud behaved. Obviously, you're happy to win the game, especially the way they did. But it's only a regular season game, and 1 week later, you're going to face each other in the playoffs. So I really hope that it's going to fuel the Liberty and remember that and show up and show out in that game. Because Natasha Cloud did say after the game that she was ready, that she loved those moments. She loves playoff time. She won a title in 2019 with the Mystics. So we know that they're going to give 100%. Let's hope that the Liberty show up and give everything they got, because I would hate to see them go in the first round. I know that a lot of people that are hating the Liberty for no particular reason would be so delighted to see them out in the first round. So I really hope that they prove that they're here to stay and that they can compete against the best, and specifically the Aces.
I think they can get it. I think when we've seen them come out, in particular, I would say against the Aces and even Dallas, you see that intensity. You see the intensity from Stewie, Sabrina, from everyone, from 1 through 5, and so and even from the bench. So I think they'll come out different, for the playoffs. It's definitely going to be a different beast. I think, especially for the veteran players who have been there, they've won championships, they know what it takes. They're going to get the other players. They're all going to rally together. They're not going to let this one die on home court. They're going to fight with all they got. And Washington's a tough team, but again, you got to play the best to get through.
Exactly.
And to get that championship. It's not going to be easy, and even if you do beat the Mystics, it doesn't get easier after that. So, it only gets harder until you face the team in the finals, which I think a lot of people figure it might be the Aces, but we'll see if Dallas could be the dark horse. We don't know if they're going to be the unicorn.
Based on the brackets, I don't see how the Sky are going to beat the Aces, so I would put my money on the Aces in 2. Dallas against Atlanta, interesting matchup, but I feel like so far Dallas has dominated Atlanta, and they won actually today as well in Atlanta. So I definitely see the Dallas Wings winning either in 2 or 3 games, and so I definitely would like to see the Las Vegas Aces against the Dallas Wings. That would definitely be a great matchup in the semifinal. And then on our side of the brackets, before talking about the Liberty, the Connecticut Sun against the Minnesota Lynx, I would say, Connecticut, be very careful with Minnesota. Obviously, you would think that the Connecticut Sun will take care of business, but the Minnesota Lynx have created a lot of problems for Connecticut. So I feel like it will be a tighter matchup than people might believe. So who knows what will happen. And then, probably the biggest matchup of the first round, because, the Mystics were, predicted to be a top 4 team without the injuries. So it's going to be a battle. And what do you think would be the key for that playoff round? What do you think will make the difference for the Liberty to win that series?
Stewie and JJ. Sabrina will definitely make shots, but you have some tall players on the Mystic side. So Stewie and JJ are going to be a key. If Stewie can get those shots going down, it's going to be a game changer. If everyone can contribute, that will help tremendously. So Stewie doesn't have to be the main scorer. And also JJ, rebounding is what's going to really affect these games. It's like who's going to command the boards. And if you can keep JJ in the paint under the basket and hopefully, boxing out and getting those boards, they have a really excellent chance at taking down the Mystics. And so it's going to be important to feed JJ. It's going to be important for her to be confident and aggressive in the paint no matter who's guarding her. And Stewie's going to be Stewie. So, those two are going to be crucial.
Yeah, and for me, I think the key is going to be to slow down Natasha Cloud and Brittney Sykes. I feel like they're the two players that really set the tempo for the Mystics. And if you manage to slow them down, obviously you could argue that there's Elena Donadon. But she only scored 11 points in total in the last in this matchup this past Sunday. She scored a lot of points in the first half. I don't feel like she scored much in the second half. And I feel like if you put Stewie on defense against her, I think that's a matchup that she can handle on defense. But to me, it's Natasha Cloud and Brittney Sykes. Every time the Mystics are up or, sort of like dominating, it's when those two players are really active and create, making shots, tough on defense, stealing the ball. So for me, that's definitely going to be the key. And then the field goal percentage, if the Liberty, shoot the ball at, their normal percentage, I don't see how the Mystics can stop them. So I really hope that the crowds will show out and support the Liberty so that we could hopefully try to get this done in 2 games because for my blood pressure, it would be tough to see a 3rd game in DC because, if they win one of the games at New York, the decisive game, if we get to that, would be in DC, and that would be definitely a battle. So definitely looking forward to that. And what we'll try to do a little differently this time around is to try to, bring a podcast after each game of the playoff because obviously, in 1 week time, a lot of things can happen. So be on the lookout for our podcast after each playoff game. We'll try our very best to provide content for you and share those exciting playoff games ahead. But thank you so much for listening once again to our podcast. We're really grateful for you to take the time to listen to us. And as we always say, Felicia,
let's go Liberty!